Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, a bit of everything really. I've got some horror, I've got some Sweet Valley High, I've got some thrillers, and I've got one of the best crime novels I've read for a long time. It's my weekly wrap-up. So yeah, there's a bit of everything in today's video. I've smashed through a load of different books this week and some comics as well, so plenty of things to talk about. So I will crack on and let you know what I've been reading. So I was reading two things when I filmed this video last week. So the first of those was Double Love by Francine, Pascal and Kate William, the first of the Sweet Valley High books. And this was just it was just diverting fun. I really enjoyed it. So there was a bit of confusion, if you like, a bit of misunderstanding between the two sisters, Elizabeth and Jessica. Elizabeth thought Jessica was going after a boy that she liked, so there was definitely some sibling rivalry, but there was some broader misunderstanding in the family as well. So the sisters thought that their dad was having an affair with this woman. Turned out he wasn't at all. So loads of that kind of enjoyable misunderstanding type stuff that builds tension. So just a fun kind of YA novel. I had a really good time with it, and it did end on a cliffhanger, which made me really want to read the second book in the Sweet Valley High series, and I did indeed do that. So I'll talk about that a bit later in this video. The other thing I was reading was something very different. So it was Conjure Wife by Fritz Leiber from the 1940s. So this is one of my picks for Horror Mayhem, where I'm reading horror books from different decades. So as I say, this was my 40th pick, and this was interesting and fun. So the concept, as I said last week, is that women are secretly witches and they use their witchy powers to help their husbands succeed. So definitely quite a 1940s concept. And the first half of the book is kind of quite humorous and kind of plays around with that concept a bit. The second half was more traditionally horror, I would have said, with more kind of traditional portrayal of witchcraft. Overall, it was an entertaining read, but it didn't really grab me as much as I thought it might. So I enjoyed it, and I'm certainly glad I read it, but I didn't really, I didn't completely love it. After that then, I read a book for the project where I'm buddy reading with my dad his 12 favourite books, and this was a cracker. This was really good. So this was The Dancing Men by Duncan. So this is an 80s thriller, and the setup is there's a guy, a successful senator in the US, who's been picked to be the Democratic Party candidate for president. So they start doing like double checks on his background to make sure there's nothing there untoward, and they hire a guy to look into, in particular, this guy who was his grandfather, who was an Irishman who ended up emigrating to the US. And this investigator fairly quickly finds out some terrible stuff about the grandfather's past, and thereafter, for various reasons, he loses contact with the people who are running this senator's campaign. They decide they want to put a halt on things. They don't want any of this stuff getting out, but the investigator continues unknowingly investigating, and they end up hiring people to try and stop him. So it was kind of a bit of a cat and mouse thriller. The thing I really loved about this, though, was the plotting was great. The plotting was really solidly done, but also the investigator and this woman he meets in his investigations were just really charming central characters for this book. I really enjoyed reading about them, and they were both kind of like completely ordinary people, basically, who end up getting swept up in this kind of political intrigue. So a really very enjoyable thriller, really gripping, quite amusing at times and quite sweet at times. I really enjoyed it a lot. After that then, I read something completely different. So I made a video a while ago saying I wanted to try some more extreme horror, and I've kind of gradually been dipping my toe into that subgenre. There's one author who I had read before who gets talked about and praised a lot in kind of extreme horror circles, and that's Kristopher Triana. So I read and reviewed on the channel some time ago now his book Gone to See the Riverman, which I thought was pretty good but not fantastic. I read an earlier book by him, Full Brutal, which at first I was quite enjoying, and then I ended up really not enjoying at all. So it's about this teenage girl at high school who basically is like a psychopath, and who, and this is not really a spoiler, through the course of the book builds up to basically being a serial killer. The first half of the book reminded me a lot of Tamper by Alyssa Nutting, in that you see like the kind of inner workings of the mind of a psychopath. And Alyssa Nutting's book is about a woman who's a teacher who abuses children, like boys, who she teaches. This the Kristopher Triana book kind of flips things, in that this teenage girl is a psychopath, and she seduces one of her teachers and ends up basically trying to like destroy his life. So that initial part of it I thought was kind of quite interesting, but I did find the central character completely unconvincing throughout the book. And as the book progresses, it gets more and more horrible, and I just end up finding it really, really like depressing. Basically, I did a video in the last week where I reviewed the book Rotten Tommy by David Sodergren, and I said in that the thing I really like about David Sodergren's books is that they are, you know, really graphically violent and horrible, but they also have a bit of heart, a bit of emotion, and you care about some of the characters. I didn't care about any of the characters in the Kristopher Triana book, and it just felt misanthropic and unpleasant. After that, I needed a palate cleanser, so I went back to Sweet Valley High and read that second book in the series, Secrets. And this kind of focuses on Enid, who's like a friend of one of the sisters, and a boy from her past, and secrets around him. So another one where the truth is kind of a bit obscured, and different characters in the book have different perceptions of the truth, and that leads to misunderstandings and drama. So again, it was just really, really enjoyable. I didn't like it quite as much as Double Love, but it was fun. After that then I read a few comics. So I've got a stack of Commando comics that I haven't read yet. So this is a British war comic that was originally published in, I think, kind of the 60s and 70s, and you know, still runs today. But what they do nowadays is they republish some of the older stories, and then they also publish new stories. So each one of these has a complete story in them, and they were all really fun. So I read Bait, Nothing But Trouble, Lucky Coin, and They Called Him Traitor. The best of them was definitely Bait. So this has two pilots on opposing sides who end up both crashing in the jungle somewhere, and there are loads of lions there, and they have to team up to avoid the lions and escape the lions. And it was just really, really fun. I enjoyed that enormously. This is one of the modern ones. This is a new one. After that then I read just a fantastic crime book. I can't believe it's taken me this long to read it. This was sent to me by a viewer a long time ago, and it was fantastic. So it's The Night of the Hunter by Davis Grubb. Again, I'd picked this out as a pick for Horror Mayhem, this time for the 1950s, and technically it's a crime novel, but I think you could definitely call it a horror novel as well. It has a psychopath at its centre who is absolutely riveting to read. So the concept here is this kind of fairly ordinary guy has kind of flipped and got caught up in a bank robbery. So he's tried to rob a bank. He's killed two people in that attempt, and he's ended up getting away with a load of money, but then almost immediately gets caught by the police and ends up being executed. While he's in prison, he meets the psychopath character, who's a guy who calls himself the Preacher, famously played by Robert Mitchum in the movie. I still haven't seen the movie, but I really need to. And he has love and hate tattooed on his knuckles, and those hands are, you know, kind of central to the book really, and keep on getting referenced in the book. So he thinks that the guy who died has managed to secrete this money somewhere that he stole, which is $10,000. So he goes to the guy's family and kind of inserts himself into their family in order to try and find the money. And really the book is about kind of a battle of wits between him and the two kids. It was just fantastic, almost unbearably tense at times. Really, really great, really gripping. This psychopath character, the Preacher, is just brilliant, wonderfully done. I enjoyed this so much, and Davis Grubb wrote quite a few things, including some, you know, more traditional, I think, horror type stuff in terms of short stories. So I definitely want to read some more stuff by him. But if you like kind of noirish stuff, this is fantastic. It's got a real southern feel to it as well, so it kind of felt a bit like a blend of southern gothic and noir, but just brilliant stuff. After that then, I read another Duncan book. So I'd enjoyed that Duncan book so much, I thought I'd try another book by him, and one of his earlier books, Whiteout, was available on Coobo Plus. And this was fun. I didn't like it as much as The Dancing Men. It wasn't as intricately or interestingly plotted, and it also didn't have that it didn't have as many likeable characters as The Dancing Men did, but it was still a decent thriller. So the concept here is this guy who works for a company that make hovercrafts, so it's very 70s, goes to a US military base in Greenland, so quite topical, to demonstrate this hovercraft to them. And when he gets there, you know, it's kind of very inhospitable, and there have been a series of unexplained deaths at this military base. And what you end up with is it was in some ways more of a mystery than a thriller, and felt a bit like a kind of closed circle style mystery, in that you know that one of the people on the base is responsible for these deaths, but you don't know who it is. There were some really enjoyable, gripping kind of scenes of peril, particularly involving the environment, which, you know, as I said, is very inhospitable. It felt a bit at times like the movie, John Carpenter's movie version of The Thing, in that you've got a group of men, constrained by their environment, with loads of suspicion and stuff like that. Clearly it doesn't have the horror elements of The Thing. It was more of a traditional thriller, but it definitely reminded me a bit of that. So that was a fun read, not as good as The Dancing Men, as I say, but still very enjoyable. So that brings me to the end of what I have read this week. I've got 3 things on the go at the moment. So Pet Sematary by Stephen King, which I talked a bit about last week, so I'm listening to the audiobook of this. I'm still enjoying it, but as I said last week, I do feel it's definitely a lot longer than it needed to be, but it is an enjoyable and you know, quite like disturbing read at times. So yeah, enjoying that. I'm also reading for the CriminOlly book club this month. We're reading Lost Souls by Poppy C. Brite. So I had tried to read this when it first came out and DNF'd it, but I'm really enjoying it this time. So I am about a third of the way through, I think, and it's really good. So it's a really rich, evocative vampire novel set around New Orleans. Loads of it's got a real 90s vibe to it. So it came out in the early 90s, and there's loads of references to like bands and things like that from that kind of time. But I'm enjoying it very much indeed. So I probably will at some point do a full review of this. I'm doing a kind of ongoing series of vlog videos for my patrons and channel members where I talk about it. But yeah, I'll do a full review at some point as well. But yeah, enjoying that very much so far. And then I've also just started this morning A Helping Hand by Celia Dale. So this is my 1960s pick for Horror Mayhem. So I read a Celia Dale book last month, which I really enjoyed. This again so far is great. So it's got this, a bit like the other book I read by her, which was called A Dark Corner. It's got this weird couple at the centre of it. And in this one, this couple have gone on holiday to a different couple. I made it sound like it was the same couple. It's a different couple. So they are a retired English couple. They've gone on holiday to Italy, and they meet this elderly woman and her niece there. And they are kind of inserting themselves into their lives in a slightly creepy way. The husband of the couple is really like lecherous and creepy and quite unpleasant. So I'm really enjoying this a lot so far. Really interested to see where it goes, because I've got no idea what's going to happen. So that is what I have read and am currently reading. In terms of channel stuff then, so in the last week you've had my review of Rotten Tommy, which I mentioned. You had an unboxing video where I unboxed a load of boxes that were sent to me by one of my viewers, Heidi, packed with books and snacks and goodies. And you also had my April wrap-up video. In the week ahead then, I'm not entirely sure exactly what videos I'm going to make, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a video where I talk about how I managed to read so much. This week clearly being a good example of that. So I've had a lot of people ask me recently in the comments about that. It is something I've made videos about in the past, but I thought it was probably time for a refresh. So I'll talk about the techniques I use and the kind of habits I have that allow me to read as much as I do. I'm going to do a review of the book Challenge by Warwick Collins, which is a really enjoyable early 90s thriller about a yacht race between the US and the USSR. I'm probably going to do a review of the Big Me Read, which is a small budget e-reader I've been using recently. And I'm going to do another unboxing video. So another one of my viewers, Jessie, sent me a box which I received this week, packed with books, some really interesting books in there. It was a lovely mix of different books. So I have filmed myself unboxing that box. So I will share that with you in the week ahead as well. Anyway, that's me done for this video. Thank you very much if you made it this far. I really do appreciate it. Hope you have read some fantastic stuff this week too. Let me know if you read any of the books I talked about and what you've been reading. And as always, thanks very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.